So, every year, the Suzy Lamplugh Trust hosts National Personal Safety Day. And this is an event to raise awareness of the critical issues around personal safety. We're proud to have partnered with People Safe once again, and Naz is here, you'll be hearing from him a bit later, on a new report looking at frontline workers' experience of violence, aggression and harassment, with a particular emphasis on the retail, hospitality, healthcare and transportation sectors, and I'm sure many of you are here from across those sectors. I think never has this conversation been more at the forefront of our minds than now, following the horrific and sad events in Huntingdon. And our thoughts are, of course, with all of those impacted by the shocking incident. Thank you to colleagues from the transport industry who have taken the time to be here today. Your voice is really important as a part of this conversation. So before I begin introducing our main speakers, I'm going to take us through some of the key highlights of the report that we have launched today for National Personal Safety Day. I think it'd be remiss of me to start without just giving you a little bit about who we are and why we are here. So we were set up in 1986. Actually, we have our 40th anniversary coming up next year, following the disappearance of Suzy Lamplugh. She was a 25-year-old estate agent. She left her work office, Sturgis & Sons, on Fulham Road on the 28th of July 1986 to go and see a client. She left her handbag behind, suggesting that she wasn't going to be long, and about 10 minutes later she was seen waiting outside the property, and about 1 p.m. she was joined by who she referred to as a Mr. Kipper. She was not seen since that moment, and her manager called in and reported her missing at about 6:45. She was officially declared dead and presumed murdered in 1993, and it was this that led her parents, Paul and Dinah Lamplugh, on their long campaign in making personal safety a public policy priority. They actually believed that Suzy had been stalked. At the time, the language of harassment was used, and it's this what's led to us campaigning in these key areas of personal safety, harassment and stalking. And we do this through three key areas. Our three key objectives are supporting, educating and campaigning. So we run the National Stalking Helpline and the National Stalking Advocacy Service. To date, that's supported over 75,000 victims. We have a number of online tools to support victims to navigate if they're being stalked or harassed, to get some advice. We run specialist services in particular regions across the country. That includes the London Stalking Support Service. We run perpetrator programmes, referred to as our multi-agency stalking intervention programmes, MASIPs, and specialist trauma-informed programmes for victims, and that's our PATHS model. We do a huge amount of education work, and that includes workplace training and consultancy, given obviously that Suzy disappeared in the workplace, bystander training, publishing guidance on stalking, and training to statutory services, including our Lifeline training, which we offer to police forces. Campaigning has been a pivotal part of the work that we have done since we were formed in 1986. Notably, we campaigned for the 1997 harassment legislation. Paul and Dinah Lamplugh did. In 2012, the stalking legislation, things like stalking protection orders. Our most long-standing campaign is around taxis and private hire vehicles, campaigning for minimum licensing standards. And we're really pleased to see that the government are looking to make commitments in that area. So the report we released today echoes a growing body of research and news reports highlighting the increase in workplace violence faced by workers, particularly those in frontline roles. And the legislative cornerstone which underpins the response to workplace violence is the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, which places a duty on employers to protect the health and safety and welfare of employees. So this is just an overview of the timeline in terms of the trajectory that we've been in terms of that legislative framework. This was then expanded on through the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999, which introduced requirements for risk assessments and preventative measures. And more recently, the Worker Protection Act 2023, which introduced a duty on employers to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. The Employment Rights Bill which is in the latter stages of its passage through Parliament, and you'll be hearing from colleagues who are leading on that campaign shortly, is looking to expand on that duty. So employers must ensure that employees are not harassed by third parties, customers or clients. However, our report highlights how legislation has fallen short in addressing the harm faced by workers in their workplaces every day. So in September 2025, we commissioned a survey with YouGov looking at workers' experience of violence, aggression and abuse in the workplace, as I mentioned, across those 4 key sectors, and the results were quite shocking. 31% of respondents stated that they had experienced one incident at work within the last year. The most common incidents experienced by workers across all 4 sectors included verbal abuse or threats, that was 21%, and bullying or intimidation, and that was 14%. 1 in 5 stated that they felt they were often or sometimes at risk of violence, aggression, abuse, or harassment. What's quite interesting is the gap between the perceived risk and the actual incidents suggests a normalisation of abuse by frontline workers. Incidents of violence, aggression, abuse, or harassment do not necessarily seem to make them feel unsafe, but rather seem to get accepted as part of the job. And obviously, we know that's not acceptable and something we need to shift. Our report also supports research that shows certain communities are more at risk at work. Our survey found that 41% of Black and minoritized respondents experienced an incident in the workplace in the past year, and that's approximately 10% higher than the overall rate. It is well documented that disabled workers, LGBTQ+ workers, and Black and minoritized workers face disproportionately high levels of workplace abuse and violence. Indeed, a 2025 TUC report indicated 49% of disabled workers had experienced bullying, discrimination, or harassment at work in the past year. Additionally, other research shows that over 50% of LGBTQ+ workers surveyed reported experiencing at least one form of bullying or harassment in the past 5 years. These findings obviously underscore the heightened vulnerability of these groups and the urgent need for inclusive policies and stronger protections to ensure safe and equitable workplaces. We also found that women were 8 times more likely than men to experience sexual misconduct at work, and this highlights the gendered nature of workplace risks, as well as the inadequacy of the current legislation, including the Worker Protection Act, in addressing these issues. Any form of assault, sexual assault, is not acceptable in the workplace. There it remains a recurring reality for thousands of workers, disproportionately women, highlights an urgent need for stronger preventative measures, clearer accountability for employers, and a cultural shift in attitudes towards workplace safety. So in a number of case studies, number of reports hit the press that confirms both the gendered nature of workplace risks and the inadequacy of these protections. The failure to address sexual harassment in the workplace can lead to devastating consequences, as seen in the recent investigation by the BBC into McDonald's. The investigation revealed widespread sexual harassment and abuse happening across McDonald's restaurants in the UK. And since that original investigation, the EHRC has had over 300 reported incidents of harassment. This year, the company confirmed it has dismissed 29 staff members for sexual harassment, and more than 700 workers are preparing legal claims citing harassment, assault, and discrimination. Again, the Equality and Human Rights Commission has intervened, requiring McDonald's to sign a legally binding agreement to strengthen training, reporting systems, and protections for staff. But despite these measures, accounts from employees suggest that harassment has been normalised within the workplace culture, leaving many feeling unsafe and unprotected. This is not a unique case. Indeed, high-profile incidents we've seen at Harrods, the Confederation of British Industry, and BBC, amongst others, have highlighted how these behaviours are often not confined to one sector and go unaddressed. Despite the prevalence of violence and abuse in the workplace, many incidents, as I've said, go unreported. According to our survey, nearly a third of workers who experienced an incident did not actually report at all. The patterns illustrated in the previous case study show how abuse and violence in the workplace can be normalised, with a lack of action by employers resulting in victims often feeling discouraged to come forward. Reporting is vital in identifying patterns of behaviour so we can hold perpetrators to account and ensuring that justice is served for the victim. It's essential so that all reports are responded to and acted on swiftly and effectively by employers, and that reporting requirements to regulators are fulfilled to ensure the prevalence of harmful behaviours are recorded and mitigated. A year into the Worker Protection Act coming into force, we're disappointed to see survey data that's indicating that 30% of respondents reported receiving no training or resources from their employer on managing or preventing violence, aggression or harassment at work. All this despite the Worker Protection Act mandating that employers take reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment, such as through providing training. In practice, this lack of employer action contributes to a culture in which violence and harassment are normalised, accountability is limited, and legal protections are often then just rendered largely symbolic rather than practical. And in our survey, respondents outlined clearly what they wanted employers to do. 13%, for example, said personal safety and lone working training would be helpful. 15% said identifying bystander training would be helpful. 17% said CCTV or things like security guards. 12% wanted access to panic alarms or apps. 13% stressed the need for robust and transparent reporting that I've spoken about. And 13% highlighting the strengthening of workplace safety policies in consultation with specialist services. None of this really is, I think, too much to ask. These are quite practical suggestions that I think really need to be taken seriously. So policy recommendations, what can we do about this? Our report lays out a number of key policy recommendations aimed at both government and employers. Our key call is for government to strengthen existing protections by expanding on the duty to protect laid out in the Worker Protection Act, so it covers all forms of violence against women and girls and brings this under the remit of the Health and Safety Executive. And as I said, you'll be hearing from colleagues. We've worked extensively alongside.
Attention, please. Attention, please. This is the test of the fire and voice alarm system. There is no need to take any action. Attention, please. Attention, please. This is the test of the fire and voice alarm system. There is no need to take any action.
I'm actually not sure how many times he's going to go. So. Is that we're done? Oh, he's going to keep going. Okay.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? Fire has been reported in the building. This report is being investigated. Please listen for further instructions. May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? Fire has been reported in the building. This report is being investigated. Please listen for further instructions.
Not quite. We're nearly there. No, I think we're. There we go.
Attention, please. Attention, please. The test of the fire and voice alarm system has now been completed.
There we go. Maybe not.
Attention, please. Attention, please. The test of the fire and voice alarm system has now been completed.
Now I don't know if he's going to say that again. But has it exactly? I think with it we're good. Okay, thank you very much. That was a very thorough test. I was just mentioning we're going to hear from colleagues later on the work that's been done around that Worker Protection Act. Colleagues from Rights of Women and Baroness Smith are here. We're really excited to hear from them. So thank you for joining us. That has told me, that alarm, that I need to swiftly wrap up because Naz is going to come on, so that's our 10 o'clock. But I just wanted to quickly run through some policy recommendations for employers. Employers have a duty of care towards their employees, and the following policy recommendations are crucial if we want to foster safe, inclusive and respectful workplaces. Employers must take steps to prevent things like sexual harassment in the workplace, as is required by the Worker Protection Act, by acting on reports, raising awareness of abusive and violent behaviours through visible policies, implementing training and a code of conduct to increase the understanding and shift the culture within an organisation, and respond with robust consequences whenever there are breaches. Employers must embed clear, responsive and empathetic reporting processes and support mechanisms that encourage staff, customers and members of the public to come forward to report incidents, fostering a safe and inclusive, again, respectful environment, and signposting to support services where incidents occur. And they must publish their personal safety policies if they do not have any, consult with specialist organisations to put those in place. Thank you very much, everyone. Those are the sort of key highlights from the report from me, but it is available on our website if you'd like to look at that in any more detail. And as I said, we'll be talking to some of those key themes in the course of this morning. We've got a packed agenda. I'm really delighted to be introducing my colleagues over the coming few hours. But for now, I'd like to hand over to Naz Dosa, the CEO of People Safe, our partner on this event. Thank you so much, Naz.